I guess starting off with some house cleaning stuff. Any update on Trevor Wilson and his status with the team?
Yes, Trevor is back with the team, practiced the last 2 days, and joining full squad activities. Jalon did not practice today, and I would probably put in the doubtful area. Again, looking at it day to day, but hasn't done anything yet, and that's probably the extent I'll comment at this time.
For Trevor, how'd you see him manage this? Obviously not being around for 6 weeks, coming back. How is he managed it all?
I think initially right now, I'm sure he's, after especially yesterday, obviously he has very fresh legs. Trevor's always been one who's taken his training very seriously. He looks to be in very good shape. Still have to probably get acclimated to everything, but the biggest thing will be retention and of course things have been added and tweaked and as we've progressed through the offense. So there's things there, and we'll see if he is part of this week's travel or not.
And I guess big picture then, looking at Oklahoma, what are some of the things that have stood out to you watching them on tape?
They've extremely athletic, diverse offensive that has the ability to be very explosive. They're battling some injuries. Coach Venables, again, is a great reputation and success as a defensive coordinator and being highly multiple in and out of 3- and 4-man fronts, gives you a bunch of different looks, does a lot, and to utilize the athletes in their program. Maybe it hasn't gone their way of late, but as we know from last year as well, the first year there's going to be times where you're going to have some bumps, and yet that's too good of a staff, too good of a program, and everything, and a roster that it's going to be a big test for us down there.
Luke Grimm's leading you all in receptions and yards. Do you envision that for him during fall camp? Is this sort of just him doing what you thought he would do?
I didn't really envision who would be the leading receiver. I've never really thought of it that way. We've talked about Lawrence and him. You could see him coming around last year at different times. Obviously, Kwame was such a big part of the passing game last year. But he's gritty and he finds ways to get open. He has great hands, extreme competitor. And I can definitely see why he is at this point. But for us to be the offense that we have shown flashes of and want to be, we're going to need to be diverse as possible. And to have him right now, that's great. It's also great to see Mason Fairchild have some of the plays that he had, and it keeps kind of adding more weapons to the arsenal.
And then 6 games in, how do you feel like Craig Young is acclimated to what you want him to be able to do?
Say that again. What about Craig?
Just how is he acclimated to what you want him to do?
I think Craig's done a fine job. He's still got Craig takes his craft very seriously, works at it. I think we're asking him to do a lot sometimes. Some weeks we scale back a little bit because we put a lot on his plate. He never backs away from that. But again, I think he's continued to play well for us and has been a great addition.
With Jason on Saturday for that second half, it's obviously real time and on the fly like that, so probably not a ton of time to change or tweak much that you do. Do you anticipate doing that if he has to play moving forward?
Well, you're always going to, Matt, tweak to somebody's strengths, but, the call sheet's the call sheet, and what we're doing to continue to do what we can to be as multiple as possible. It's really a credit to him. I think we all recognize that. As we said, I said it, I think, after the post game. I stood in here a lot in August and talked about him playing well. And it wasn't just to appease him or take something off Jalon and that, because especially at that position. But I've also found is in our program now, we've got a lot of guys that want to play, can play. And sometimes you got to make sure you're recognizing their efforts, even though the snaps may not show up all the time. So, that's why it was important, and I'm happy for him. If he ends up being there for a while, I'm sure there'll be things that he's more comfortable with than other maybe plays or something that Jalon runs or something. But again, that hasn't been a heavy dose of conversation yet.
Last year, you guys talked a lot about your ability to bounce back from one week to the next, regardless of what happened. And I wonder what you want to see this week. 5-0 is a different start than anything you had last year. So what do you want to see in that regard with this team responding? And
I thought we responded well yesterday. It's a unique little schedule now where it's a fall break. There's not classes yesterday or today, and we went practice on grass, and so a little bit change of routine, and that's always, I don't want to say concerning, but it can be different when we alter schedules. But how they respond to it, attitude, we're getting at that point. We haven't had an open week yet. Guys are banged up. It's a little tougher on Monday and sometimes Tuesday to get the body where it was a few weeks back. But how do they handle it with body language, accepting what's on film? Things that we talked about, though, is, I think we've had some uncharacteristic turnovers that have been disappointing. I think I've said it before, our fourth quarter penalties, I had the guys look it up. Last year we had 15 penalties in the fourth quarter all season. We've had 14 already this year. That's not acceptable. We have to be better. And, you live that way, it's going to cost you. And I think it did, and that was part of the story on Saturday.
You jumped me on that. I was going to ask you about those, and what do you do to address that? What can you do?
Yeah, excuse me. Holding calls, interior-wise, I don't know how much a guy plays that much differently in the fourth. Is he getting tired? You can't. You got to look at a lot of different things. Offsides on a kickoff, jumping off sides on third and long. Those are probably more correctable. Obviously, should be more correctable. I don't know if those were all 4 penalties there. But yeah, some of those you're probably 50-50 on what you should be able to change there. Yeah.
And you mentioned this in the past. I also wanted to ask you. You've talked about maybe sending film in to officials and things of that nature on calls. Anything like that this week? Or
we send them in every week.
Oh, you do? Okay.
We do. We send them in every week. Some weeks more than others.
Sure. How would you classify this week? More than others?
We send a lot in every at certain times.
Thank you.
Coach, OU also has a quarterback hurt. So what do? Do you prepare for both? Or I'm sure you'd rather know for sure.
Yeah, he'll play. Everything that we were told. He traveled last week, warmed up, took snaps with the first string in warm-ups. Everything was pointing to him playing. I'm not their doctor. I'm not their coach. But I would say, with the injury, again, in today's world of concussions nationally, I think you've got to feel very good about it. I'm not, but I would anticipate that he'll be under, in that huddle running it from the start.
Do you guys look ahead for motivational things such as a bowl bid, or are you looking at the league race, or is it just the opponent?
Just the opponent. If you get caught up in any of that, you'll never get to where you want to be. Won 6 games once at Buffalo. We didn't get a bowl bid. So, you just don't worry about what you can control. And, if you're worried about that other stuff, yes, so those will be nice, but you got to earn it. And the best way to earn it is get after it today and get ready for the next one. And that's where we need to be.
And I wondered what you thought of Fairchild's catch on film.
You know, it was awesome. It was unbelievable. I saw a little bit probably better, on, one of the replay or highlights of Sports Center or something, because my angle, I could hear Andy talking about it and I could tell what had happened, but I didn't really see how it happened. And, that's an outstanding play, especially for a guy who doesn't have a lot of targets and things like that. So, there's a lot of pride in that Fairchild family and from Andale, who's the best athlete. I think, and sometimes he ended up taking the back seat. I think he's got a highlight that can help boost him up there. What do you think, Brian Haney? Think so? Okay.
I'm curious on the fumbling front. I think it's 11 put on the ground, 5 lost, most in the Big 12. Obviously, it's a concern. Has it surprised you at all, considering kind of the lack of fumbles last year?
Yeah. Because some of it, the pitch play, again, that's not just pitch relationship. It's correct footwork and things like that has timing. But it's easy to stand up here and say, well, Jason hasn't played much and Kai Thomas didn't play for 2 weeks, and then so they didn't practice much, and okay, whatever. But we called the play and we got to execute. Ball security, trying to make plays. I mean, I know Jalon knows better, but when Jalon stretches one out and scores a touchdown, we're all happy talking about what a great play it is. And then he tries to jump and do, and he puts it on the ground. And that's why, when you are at practice or allowed at practice, you've watched the turnover circuits that we do every week, and we don't stop doing those. And ball security circuits and all those things. And you've watched the drills, because usually you guys are standing by that most of the time. You know it's coached. You know what you do. We just got to be better at it. Now, when you run some option, you're going to put – there are going to be some. We talked about that in the off season, that, though you never want them, you're going to have to live with some of those sometimes. It's just like if you're going to throw it a bunch, you're gonna throw some interceptions. And that said, though, we know it, we're frustrated by it, and we've got to find a way to correct it.
Defensively, you said after the game on Saturday that you felt like it was a better performance, and the stats showed. Overall, how have you seen kind of that unit progress as that season has gone along, and where do you feel like you guys are at past the midway point?
I continue to be pleased with it. I mean, like I said, I think after the game or other times before, I don't think in today's college football world and explosive offenses and things that you can get caught up on point totals or yards all the time. The 99-yard drive was disappointing. I think the rest, there's some plays and some explosive. That's a pretty explosive football team. If somebody, go to Gary's question, if somebody told me down the road, no offense to anybody that's on, we play here in the future, but if somebody said that TCU is going to play for a conference championship, it's not going to surprise me. And that's a really, really good football team. And they're big, they're physical, they're fast, all the way through the lineup. So when you see that, and when you see what we're going against sometimes and some of the plays that their playmakers made, where we are holistically, I think we're doing good, not great. I don't want to say it's average. I think it's an improving defense. I think we're finding a little more comfort in the different things we can do with this group. But now you're going to go against a very diverse offense again, an offense that's going to try to go probably play the fastest we've seen, especially if they're healthy. And that'll create a new set of challenges.
What do you make of Oklahoma's defense? And I wonder also, I don't want to ask you to comment too much on another program, but when you're watching them on film, do you see signs of first year with a coach, do those things show up at all?
No, I haven't. You know, that's so hard, Matt, and it's not fair to those players or whatever, because you don't know. You're not inside that. I still think it's a talented team. You know, no one questioned when they went up to Nebraska and played really well and got off to a good start. Then, you know, a couple things happen, and you know, K-State's a good football team. We just said TCU's a really good football team. Texas got their quarterback back in a rivalry game and played really well, and they didn't, and their depth and other things have been. So you've got to take those all for what they are. I mean, everybody matches up a little differently, and then as you move down the season, you got to see where you're healthy in that, because that, you know, staff-wise, energy-wise, you know, they're very multiple in some things. But I don't see them having, like, there's a bunch of mistakes and different things. So I think it's more of some other teams playing some of their best ball against them as well. And when you're a program like that, and you know, you get everybody's best shot.
On Saturday, you mentioned the pace of play for Oklahoma. TCU went fast at times on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like when they would put a new player in, new package, you guys would sub a whole new defensive line group in there. Was that an in-game adjustment or something that you guys went into the game thinking, hey, let's control the pace that way?
In the game, we do that a fair amount. We do it different ways. We can do it others, but yeah, that's you get a chance to get guys off the field. You get a chance to substitute. You know.
And how much does that help control the pace of a game and play it at your tempo?
Yeah, I think across college football, we all use that as a way to slow it down a little bit. You know, when they do it, it doesn't, obviously you can't do it all the time, but yeah, it helps.